we've got, I mean, okay, it's not the best ideal. You should have the new books, but it's pretty much the same material on there. We've just moved it about a bit, that's all. So just a bit of a pain for you guys going back and forward in the books. But this part, we've got storage, which is after FOD, would have been in book 1, your old books. If when we come to storage, it's actually in your old book 1, but we've now got in book 4. But it's pretty much the same stuff. So FOD is our enemy, okay? We don't want any FOD in engines because it breaks things. It means we have to change engines, we have to repair blades and that sort of thing. So we always try our best to make sure that the environment is working, especially when we're doing ground running. As an engineer, we don't make sure we're running in an appropriate area, make sure there's nothing on the ground that can be sucked into the engine, okay, and cause damage. Or not very good. Stones, any debris in taxiways and aprons. Some airports are more prone to FOD than others. One of the camps I was stationed at, we had birds that would drop shells onto the runway to break them. Of course, they would break up and they get sucked into the engine. So again, it all depends on where you are in the world and the type of environment you live in. Screws, panels, intake area, yeah. Internal screws, rivets coming off, getting again into the compressor. So again, we are checking your engines as you do the rest of the aircraft. Take your time, make sure gentle taps on the cowlings, the doors, make sure nothing's loose and sitting in there. Tooling, yeah, when you work on it using the tools, make sure you don't drop any tools or lose any tools. Again, when you finish your job, you're signing that you've done 100% tool check, that all your tools are accounted for. If you have to go down an intake, like on an engine, maybe got a long intake, so before, just make sure nothing is in your pockets that could fall out. Okay, the only things you have in your ID is your ID, no loose change or mobile phones, anything like that. Okay, you shouldn't have anyway. If you get caught with it, get in trouble. Bird strikes, we can't help it. Sometimes we try our best to make sure the birds are away from airports, but inevitably, especially on takeoff and landing, they do unfortunately hit the aircraft or get ingested into the intake. And also human and animal ingestion. We have had occasions, unfortunately, people have gone down an engine and the engine wins. Okay, so again, be very careful around an engine. There's a good video online of a Navy aircraft, Navy aircraft carrier. One of the engineers got sucked an engine, but luckily survived because he had his hard hat on, and that stopped him, caused the engine to surge. He got dragged out. He was okay. A few broken ribs and a broken arm. He survived. Unfortunately, there's been occasions when people have not survived. They've gone down through the whole engine, and unfortunately, not a good outcome. Animals on the runways, yeah, you might get some rodents, hares, rabbits, deer as well. Sometimes up here we get some deer run across the runway. That can cause quite a substantial crash. So we try our best to keep it, but nature is nature, and we just try our best to keep them away. Right, okay, it's working here. So if you see something lying about, don't just pass it, pick it up, put it in the bin, appropriate bin as well. Likewise, if you find something you might recognise as an aircraft component, don't just put it in the bin. If it's near your aircraft, has it come from your aircraft or has it come from another aircraft? Again, we've had an occasion where somebody brought a bolt into our squadron and asked if they thought that was maybe an aircraft part. They weren't sure. I happened to recognise it. I could tell straight away where it was from, but we couldn't tell which aircraft it came from. So the aircraft got inspected after each flight, and we eventually found where it came from, one aircraft. It's a knockwood area behind the gearbox on the bypass case, and I just knew about the size of the bolt, knew where it came from. But again, just by chance, I happened to be there. So again, FOD is bad, but it can also help identify a problem. It can also stop an aircraft from flying, because if you find something on the ground that shouldn't be on the ground, and it's from an aircraft, and you see an aircraft taxiing, it might be worth actually getting that aircraft to stop, phone air traffic control or get a warden and say, we found this off an aircraft, it might be that aircraft it's come off of. Could be quite crucial. Okay, but otherwise, you've got everything from normal bits of wood, keys, Allen keys, stones, bits of debris, you know, it could be off anything. It could be off a car, it could be off your feet, you just don't know. But again, every airport should have what's called FOD grids before you go into taxiway, so you can, every time you go into a taxiway, you should check the tyres on your cars. They should have special tyres on them, they're called anti-FOD tyres, where the grips are wide enough for nothing to get stuck in them. Whereas normal tyres, the little ribs can actually keep some bits of stone and stuff in there. We should always check the tyres before we go anywhere near the runway or the taxiways. Okay. Okay. Prevention is always better than cure, isn't it? So ensure taxiways and the aprons a bit where the aircraft sit on, are regularly swept for debris. And there's various types of equipment you can use for this. Tool control, 100 to 200% tool control. Always look after tools. All right. Follow all procedures in the maintenance manual. Don't digress from them. And be aware of the danger areas around the engine when it's running, because that might blow debris towards another aircraft. You might be doing a ground or an aircraft, and that's actually blowing debris onto the main runway. Again, you shouldn't be in that position. It should be in a position where it's designated to do a ground run. But again, dust, stone, any other bits of debris could potentially blow, and even to a passing aircraft. Okay. So some fault prevention tactics. Odd bosses. I've used this sort of type myself behind a tractor. I used to call them magic carpets, because if you go fast enough, they take off. Yeah, in the air. So they're meant for low speeds only. You're looking at 5 miles an hour, 5-10 walking pace really. And very simple bit of kit. You can see here, they have little like scoops that as you go over the runway, the taxiway, the concrete, it will scoop all the debris up, and then we'll collect it in this area back here, which has a cover over it, which you can see here, the black cover on top of it. So it will fill up, and then you drive that to a designated area that you just basically open the Velcro up and tip it out into an approved container or area for dispersal. So you just go up in a logical pattern up and down the taxiway around the apron pan. It's a very simple but a very effective way of getting rid of a lot of debris. You'd be surprised how much that actually picks up. But the main thing is with this, you go pretty much walking pace. Okay, you don't go flying down the runway or it turns into a magic carpet. Okay, and you lose all your stones anyway. Various types. Again, you'll see these classic trucks, various versions with brushes on there, and they'll go up and down in the mornings and wherever. Okay, up and down taxiways when there's no flying going on, they'll be up and down. Every day that'll be happening. And as can be seen from here, a bit of water on the ground. The vortex can be induced from the engine's low down. So if it's sucking air up like that, if there's any small bits of debris, well, guess where that's going, okay? So again, look after it as best as you can. Oops, on that one, where have we got that one? There we go. Okay, so again, always look after tools and any debris, just pick it up. There's occasions where you might get debris flying across the runway, the taxiway. I was flying from Heathrow, and I almost pressed the button to stop the aircraft because there was a big plastic sheet was flying over towards our taxiway right in front of our aircraft. Luckily, there was a car, a poor little Land Rover, and actually managed to get it in time. But if that got into engine, that would be a bit of a mess. Okay. So common sense prevails. If there's something on the ground, it shouldn't be on the ground. Pick it up, bin it. Don't leave it. Don't leave it for someone else to do. So that's pretty much FOD, foreign object damage. Any questions on that? Again, it's not much to it. It's quite straightforward. Anything else I want to put on that one? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Easy peasy. Storage though, yeah, we need to look after engines when they're not getting used, whether on the aircraft or off the aircraft. All right, so we'll look at several time limits, and this is where it's a bit more detailed. We'll have to make a bit more of a highlight certain areas. So if an engine is installed in aircraft, number of conditions, okay, turn parts of the engine are subject, they will have continuous flow of oil. So normal conditions, you do not need to do any inhibiting or any special precautions. Okay, when the engine shuts down, any residual fuel and oil will help lubricate for short periods only. All right, so basically, what we're going to look at is the effects on wing after a certain amount of time, effects off wing after a certain amount of time. So if the engine is installed on the aircraft, if the engine is installed not to be used for up to 7 days or a week, it doesn't require any special protection. All you have to do is put the blanks on. Okay, intake, exhaust, and any other blanks, maybe it's off-take, ejectors, and that sort of thing. Anything potentially creepy crawlies, bugs, dirt can get into, you'll just put a blank on, just like we saw there. So you've got front intake blanks, you have exhaust blanks as well, and it prevents any ingress of any thing it should be in there, and allows for the weather conditions. So that's up to 7 days. Installed, 7 days, blanket off. That's all that needs to be done. Short term, again, the aircraft could be in the hangar getting worked on, so the engine's still serviceable, but it's in the hangar. This is short term for up to 1 month. So again, will not be satisfactory for a period of 1 month. Oh, just get it back. Is that just turned up? Storage. Okay. So up to a month, short-term storage as we class it. It's up to 1 month. We're going to have to do things to the fuel system. You'll also have water in the fuel system. Remember, hopefully not a lot, but there will be water in there because of the air and the tanks. So water-held suspension in the fuel will cause corrosion in fuel components, pipes, and therefore the fuel must be inhibited. In other words, we replace the fuel with a suitable inhibiting fluid. Okay, and we'll do that depending on conditions where the engine is installed or not. Okay. Oil system, reference should be made to your maintenance manual. Some manufacturers just say that the system to be drained and any filters removed and cleaned. Some just say leave it as is. On our aircraft we were allowed up to 30 days. We didn't have to do anything. All we had to do was hand rotate the engine once every 30 days, and that just moved the oil around the system. Okay. Again, it will be specific to each engine. Some say that the storage system should be filled to normal level with clean system oil and storage oil. Piston aircraft certainly use a different oil for storage. The synthetic oil used on jet engines is really good, and there's very little you have to do to that. But again, you might have to rotate the engine, hand crank them, not turn them over, just do them by hand possibly. Or if the aircraft is serviceable, yeah, use it on starter, just turn it over a few times, and that'll move the oil through the system. External treatment, so outside the engine, external engine should be cleaned, dried with compressed air where possible, and again inspect for corrosion. If you do find any corrosion, treat it in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. Okay, don't just rub it off, you have to clean it, because if you remove any paintwork, that could expose certain steel, and any parts can possibly start rusting again. So clean it, prep it, paint it as appropriate, again, all in accordance with the instructions. Desiccant or vapor phase inhibitor should be placed in intake and exhaust and all openings fitted with approved covers in black. Desiccant is the crystals that absorb moisture. Again, you'll take these desiccant bags from a specialist oven, and they will just help take any moisture that could be in there. When you put the blanks on, you've still got air in the system, okay, in the engine intake and exhaust. So just to help prevent that, you get these desiccant bags, and that will help absorb any moisture that's in the air. So that was short-term storage. So short-term storage is up to a month. Long-term storage is up to 6 months. So for protection of engines, which might be 6 months, preservation, you pretty much do what is in previously described for the short term. And in addition, a few more things you do. So one is you grease all control rods and fittings. That helps them prevent them from seizing and protect them from corrosion. Again, blank off all your vents and apertures of the engine. Cover any rubber parts with greaseproof paper. That helps stop them drying out and getting brittle and that sort of thing. And then you spray a thin coat of preservative over the whole engine forward of the exhaust unit. And it'll be some sort of water dispersal type preservative. Things used in cars like W40, but we've got other stuff as well. PX24 was what with military. You'll have something similar in the commercial side. Basically a water dispersant. At the end of 6 months storage period, the engine should be re-preserved. So up to 6 months, you'd carry out what you've done before. And then if you're going to be past 6 months, you do the whole thing again. Yeah, nice and straightforward. Alternatively, the engine might be removed. Maybe the aircraft is long-term dead. Well, we've got a nice serviceable engine on the wing. That could be getting used on another aircraft if it's near an engine. So they might even take the engine off. Okay, and they put it into a cradle and an MVP bag, a moisture vapor proof bag. And then you put that into a case for shipping and overhaul or just storage as well. All engines which are to be stored as ship for overhaul should be packed in such a way to prevent damage or corrosion or rough handling. Then, say, if you're going to do that, well, before you do that, you'll actually inhibit the engine. Okay, so before you put it in storage, you will need to flush the fuel system out and put a special inhibiting oil in. It used to be called OM11 for us. You'll have W15, W50, Aeroshell 31, whatever it is, it will be specific to your engine. Basically, inhibiting oil is a lubricating fluid. It does not corrode. It just allows the fuel system to be corrosion free. So you can imagine when you get an engine out of a cage, you put it back to the aircraft, you have to flush that out with fresh fuel. Hence why you do your wet cranking start, where you'll rotate the engine with the fuel on. That will flush out inhibiting oil. Then you do a dry crank to dry it, and then you can go for a start. So make sure when you get a brand new engine, you don't just try and start it straight away because you've got no fuel in the engine. So yeah, motoring methods, we'll describe them already, just recap anyway. All right, two main types: motor-driven or motor-driven rig, or gravity-feed rig. Sorry, motor-driven rig. Typical motor consists of an oil tank with 5 imperial gallons. So this is for actually putting the fuel, replacing the fuel with inhibiting oil. So by using an external motor, you have a 5 imperial gallon tank with a special inhibiting oil. And the motor-driven hydraulic pump will deliver about 2 imperial gallons per minute at a pressure roughly of 300 to 500 psi. Gravity one, as it sounds, basically got a tank which is again of 5 imperial gallons, and it has to be at least 3 feet above the height of the engine. So allows gravity for just the pressure to allow it to go down. Okay. And the pipe must be at least 1-inch bore fitted with a shut-off cock. All right. One test bed we used to work in, we used to get engines into the test bed. We'd set it in a rig, we'd test the engine, and then once we were happy with all the indications, we'd switch a fuel cock from fuel to inhibiting oil as the engine was running. We'd bring it back to idle first off, so you don't want it high power, and we'd inform our traffic control that we had a way to inhibit an engine while the engine was running. And what would happen is, as the fuel got replaced by inhibiting oil, you would see a big plume of white smoke coming out of the exhaust. So just in case air traffic thought we had a fire, we would let them know where to inhibit an engine. As soon as we saw the smoke coming out, we would shut the engine down. And that way, that told us that the inhibiting oil had actually gone through and replaced the fuel. Okay. But if you're just doing it without running engine, you would wait until it drains, comes out the combustion drains. So pressure rig is a classic example. Again, they will vary. You have your tank, you have a motor and a hydraulic pump and a pressure gauge, and then actually connecting up to the bleed points on your engine. Okay, you have an LP fuel drain pipe connection as well, and then it basically puts it around and flushes the system out. Okay, so the fuel will be taken out and the inhibiting oil will go in. And once it's sufficiently gone through, then that will sort itself out. Has its own filter, make sure it's clean going in. Two methods: we attach connect to the LP inlet side where the fuel will go in, and the pump and the fluid through the system until clear inhibiting fluid is seen flowing from the drain. Okay, usually from the combustion drain. So the gravity method, as I said there, it's got to be at least 3 feet. So it's worth highlighting this because you might get asked a question on inhibiting methods. So the gravity tank must be 3 feet above it. And this was the sort of type we had in the test bed. We just switch a valve, and we'd have the pipe going to a union. On the valve would be short and allowing fuel through only for normal running, and then we'd switch it around, and that would just allow the oil to go through for inhibiting purposes. Okay. Inhibiting oil will allow to flow adjacent pipes, components to all fuel expelled from your pump, your FCU, your burner, and so on. While the oil is flowing through the system, components should be bled and HP cock operated at several times. So basically open and shut the throttle. Now if you run the engine, it's easy, you just open the throttle. That's the easy way to do it. But if it's not running the engine in a test bed, you're just using the gravity, then yeah, you have to bleed certain points off. And again, you'll be told all that in the manual. Lubrication system, as I said before, it suggests that engines should be drained and any filters removed and cleaned, like we saw before. And some just say leave it as is. All right, there's nothing special to it. External treatment, again, it's the same as short-term storage, long-term storage. Again, clean as appropriate, use compressed air, any corrosion, again, remove, affect, and that sort of thing. Any paintwork, make good as well. There's a good picture of a nice high bypass engine, yeah. Feral beast there. Look at the size of the guy there, size of the engine, bit of a beast of a thing. So long-term storage up to 6 months. Again, at the end of each successive 6 months storage, installed engine should also be re-preserved, as we saw before, for a further period of storage. And again, alternately, put it back into a vapor-proof envelope. When you put it back into an engine stand, okay, so there's an engine stand inside the hangar, that's fair enough. It might be getting moved or used eventually, but you might be covering that thing up. But you might also be putting this in a cage on its own and covering the engine up. Now, when you do that, you need to check the moisture within there. And you have these desiccant indicators, which can be put into igniter ports. These are more for piston engine ones. What you'll probably have is the bag on a cage, which I'll show you shortly, will have its various stands. So if you're leaving outside, this will be an MVP bag. So it's a sealed bag. There should be no holes or cuts in it. So make sure you check the bag beforehand, before you put the engine into it. There's no holes, there's no water in the bottom. There will be an inspection hole where you can put desiccant indicator paper, which should stay blue. That means there's no air in the system or air in the bag. If it starts to turn pink, then you need to undo the bag, change the indicator, put new desiccant bags in there, which are called bandoliers, from a fresh oven, and check the bag, make sure there's no damage, reseal it, and check it after 24 hours. So when you first do the bag it up, check the indicator paper, make sure it's still blue after 24 hours. Yeah, if it turns pink, you have to rebag it. You can see there, the guy there is actually pointing to an indicator paper. Fuel components, well, you might have some components off on the shelf. Okay, so again, they need to be looked after, bagged up properly, sealed. Now, before you put them in, make sure you've got a label in there, determine you when it was taken off, what the component is, if it's serial number, the date, okay, and that sort of thing. And make sure it's all blanked up. As you can see here, all the appropriate blanks fitted, and you might have to put, especially as a fuel component, empty the fuel out, put some inhibiting oil in there, and maybe rotate the shaft and ensure it's all there. And after so long, again, if where possible, rotate the shaft while it's still within a bag. All right. So I say all the components should be inhibited as soon as possible, drained, inhibiting oil put in, and drive shafts or pumps, fuel flow rate should be turned while inhibiting, and the throttle valve, again, HP cocking component, moved as possible. And drive shaft should be smeared with a recommended storage oil and rotated every so often to make sure the shaft isn't seized. Storage. All components should be stored in areas that are dry, clean and free from corrosive fumes. Items and drives and linkages should be exercised in the bag without removal every 6 months. Some components will be given a maximum storage life, and if this is exceeded, it would then be sent away for overhaul. Okay, so when an engine has got to sit for so long, we found that the forces, they never did sit that long because there was always new engines. Again, if one is sitting for a long time, it probably put onto a test rig. There's no reason for it. If it was serviceable before, it just needs to be run. So you wouldn't send it back to manufacturer. Hopefully the airport you're working in will have a facility to possibly test engines. Yeah. So all good. But if in doubt, keep it clean, keep it wrapped up, keep it black, make sure you follow procedures, inhibiting, etc. and all that as well. And then lo and behold, there we go. That is end of the theory, gentlemen. That is all the theory we are going to cover for module 15. In the new books you would have, which the questions I've given you already, would be in page 154, not to 1000, it's 157. That'd be too many pages. Let me change that. I didn't notice that one myself.